was a chilly fall evening in a small American town, a place where the rustling of leaves and the hum of distant traffic were often the loudest sounds in the night. Oakwood had never been known for much beyond its quiet streets and friendly faces. Most of the townspeople worked at local factories, owned small businesses, or served in the police department. It was a town where things moved slowly, and that suited Sergeant Thomas Briggs just fine. Briggs was an Army veteran, having served 2 tours in Afghanistan. He'd been through hell and back, but that was in the past now. He'd returned home, settled in Oakwood, and taken a position as a night shift security guard at the local police watch post. It was a low-stress job compared to the battlefield, but it still provided him with some much-needed peace after years of chaos. The post sat just outside the town's main intersection, nestled between an old diner and a corner store. It wasn't much, but it was his domain, and nothing happened in Oakwood without his knowledge. One night, as he sat in the small, dimly lit guardhouse, sipping on his coffee, his radio crackled to life. "All units, be advised," the dispatcher's voice said. A group of bikers just turned onto Main Street, heading toward the intersection. "They're riding loud and fast, might want to keep an eye out." Briggs leaned back in his chair, his military instincts kicking in. He knew these guys, if it was the same group he was thinking of. They were the Iron Serpents, a notorious biker gang that had caused trouble in nearby towns. They didn't belong in Oakwood. The gang was known for their rowdy behavior, their love for violence, and their disdain for authority. It was a small town, and Oakwood wasn't used to such visitors. He'd seen their kind before. They always thought they could get away with anything in small towns. But Briggs wasn't just a former soldier. He was a man who respected his job, his town, and his country. He wasn't about to let anyone walk all over him, especially not on his watch. Through the dirty glass of the guardhouse, he saw them coming, a pack of motorcycles roaring down the street. The Iron Serpents. Their leather jackets gleamed under the streetlights, patches and symbols embroidered with pride, making them look like an army of their own. They were loud, obnoxious, and as usual, they were looking for trouble. Briggs leaned forward, pressing his hand against the cold metal of his rifle. The watch post was connected to the town's main police station, but tonight, the cops were spread thin, dealing with a string of burglaries. It was just him. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see what you're made of." The bikers didn't slow down as they approached the intersection. They revved their engines and sped through the stop sign, ignoring the traffic rules as they turned onto the street leading toward the local diner. Briggs knew they were looking for a fight. They always did. He wasn't afraid, though. He'd been trained for far worse situations. He keyed the mic to the dispatcher. "This is Briggs. I've got eyes on them. I'm gonna go take care of it." There was a brief crackle on the other end. "Copy that, Briggs. Stay safe." Without another word, Briggs stepped out of the guardhouse and walked toward the street. The motorcycles were still revving their engines, their riders laughing and shouting, their arrogance filling the night air. Briggs felt the weight of the situation settle over him. He wasn't just dealing with a few rowdy bikers. This was something more. They were looking for a reason to escalate things. As he reached the edge of the intersection, the bikers began to slow down, noticing him. They saw the uniform, the stance. He wasn't just some security guard. His posture, his demeanor, he was a soldier. He didn't flinch. The leader of the group, a burly man in his 40s named Jack Bones Harris, peeled off from the pack and approached Briggs. He was a big guy, tall and wide, his face covered in tattoos, his arms riddled with scars. The man exuded menace, and his gaze locked onto Briggs like a predator eyeing its prey. "You, the cop in charge here, tough guy?" Bones asked, his voice low and gruff. Briggs met his gaze without flinching. "No, But I'm the guy who makes sure assholes like you don't run this town. Bones chuckled, stepping closer. I don't know who you think you are, but you're messing with the wrong people tonight. Briggs could feel the tension rising. The other bikers were starting to circle around, clearly itching for a confrontation. It was clear they thought they could intimidate him, and maybe they were used to getting their way. But Briggs had been to war. He'd faced down insurgents, dodged bullets, and seen things that most people couldn't even begin to imagine. These bikers didn't scare him. You and your buddies better turn around and get out of here, Briggs said, his voice calm but firm. Now. Bones took a step forward, his lips curling into a smirk. And what if we don't? You gonna take us all on by yourself? Briggs didn't answer immediately. He just stood there, his eyes scanning the group. The other bikers were still circling, some revving their engines, others muttering under their breath. But the leader was the one that mattered. If he backed down, the rest would follow. If not. Briggs was prepared for that too. You really want to test me, Bones? Briggs asked, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The silence between them thickened. Bones narrowed his eyes, then looked over his shoulder at his crew. For a split second, there was hesitation in his eyes, something Briggs picked up on immediately. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Bones didn't want to get into a fight with a man like him. Not with the way Briggs stood, the way he carried himself. Get out of here, Briggs repeated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. The seconds dragged on, and the air grew heavier. Finally, Bones turned to his gang. All right, boys. Let's roll, he said with a wave of his hand. The bikers grumbled, clearly not pleased. They revved their engines, giving Briggs one last glare before peeling off into the night. Bones shot Briggs a look that said, You'll regret this. But he didn't make a move. They were gone. Briggs stood there, watching them disappear into the distance, his muscles still tense, his hand hovering near his holster. It wasn't over. He knew that. Biker gangs didn't just forget. But for now, he'd won. The town was safe, and that was all that mattered. He returned to the watch post, sliding back into his chair. The radio crackled again. Briggs, you good? He picked up the mech. Yeah, all clear. They're on their way out. Good work, the dispatcher said, the relief palpable in his voice. We've got your back if they come back through. Briggs leaned back in his chair, looking out the window as the sound of motorcycles faded into the distance. The night had been a reminder that peace was fragile. It didn't come easy. But as long as he was here, as long as he was standing watch, he'd make sure Oakwood stayed safe. He wasn't just a